Hi guys, welcome to Antique Sprinklers. Today we are talking about a sprinkler I hadn't encountered before, and I thought we'd try something interesting. If you have never held the sprinkler I'm going to talk about in your hand, the Buckner 6155 from the very early 1970s, if you've never had one of these, never seen one in person, go ahead and hit like, and so I can get a sense of just how unique and how rare I happen to think this sprinkler is. It was a new one by me, and I was pretty familiar with the Buckner line for many decades. So I'm excited to see how many of you it's new to as well. As I mentioned, we're talking about the Buckner 6155. It is a 3/4 inch plastic case, adjustable part circle, brass impact head internally, with a painted aluminum cover. And this guy dates, I've only seen it in the 1971 Buckner catalog. It's not in the 73, it's not in catalogs I've seen from the 1960s. So my sense is it was only available for a fairly short period in time. And the way I saw it is something I should mention. I've talked in other videos about the other folks who share an interest in sprinklers, coming forward with information and access to their collections and that kind of thing, and how much I enjoy this. And one of the things I love about making this video is there are 3 of my friends who played a role in putting together the content that you're going to see here today. So my buddy Frank had a new old stock 6155, and this thing is pristine. It definitely was never in the ground, and when you see it later in operation popped up and you can see the internal, it's still shiny brass in there and just looks great. And then my buddy Ben from Ripon, California is a contractor, and he took this guy out of the ground. And so you can see the aluminum case the aluminum top, I should say, has had years of weathering and stuff rolling over it, and probably some chemicals applied to the lawn and that kind of thing. But it's still in amazing shape. And I also videoed it in action, and it works beautifully. So basically what you get is a before and after of the same sprinkler, one that only lived inside a dark cardboard box, and the other one that was out there keeping grass alive for what I assume was quite a while. And a little scuffed up, a little scratched up, but still running just beautifully. And I think that's a tribute to the quality that Buckner put out. So to fix these guys in time, 1971 would have been coming towards the end of James Cosen's first stint of owning Buckner. This would have been a couple years before he sold to Johns Manville. And I have a later Johns Manville catalog, and they don't appear in that either. And so, I'm sorry, I neglected to say who the third person was. So the guy who owns the 1971 catalog is my buddy Dave from Old School Sprinklers. And their performance charts, the beautiful pictures from the catalog are just so helpful when you're trying to understand the history of these sprinklers. And I'm very grateful. Dave is a guy who has not only saved a ton of sprinklers from the recycle bin, but to my way of thinking, just as importantly, a ton of catalogs and parts explosions and price sheets, and that information is just pure gold to somebody who's interested in the history of this stuff like I am. So go check out Old School Sprinklers. He has really interesting stuff that he shows people. And so that's great. We got 4 folks, if you include me, my little contribution here, coming together to talk about the Buckner 6155. And this guy, it's interesting, so you can see, hopefully you can see that, it has the Buckner 155 impact in it. And so that also was a standalone impact that you could put on a riser. And it also came as a 6150, and for that they would put the 150 in it as the internal for full circle. Even though you can take a 155 and make it full circle, my assumption is that was just a little bit slightly less expensive version if you wanted to save a little money on your installation. Down below that sprinkler I just showed you, there is a plastic hex nut that threads into the case. And so like you would have in a Nelson 6700 series, a mini paw, a maxi paw, there was a wrench, I think it was the WR50 from Buckner, that you would slide down in there, it would fit on that nut, and you could back the internal out and do maintenance on it, or or replace it, or clear a clogged nozzle, all the kinds of things that happen to these things out in the field. And then the other thing, and I always wondered about this, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's a 3/4 inch inlet, but there is a plastic rim in there that extends well into that inlet that really constricts the orifice. And the catalog refers to that as a surge arrestor. And they must have figured that if you get high pressure at high volume hitting one of these things, you could potentially blow it apart. And I can tell you from experience, this is one of my major fails. A contractor had a customer who'd been grandfathered in when he bought his house that was on a golf course to be allowed to use the golf course's irrigation water for his own irrigation system. And so the contractor said that it was just standard pressure where you got to his house. I should have asked for a reading. I sold him the successor sprinkler Buckner made like this, and he hooked it up, and that thing had something like 90 psi, and it just blew the internals straight out of it. Fortunately, no one was standing over them when he turned them on, because they turned immediately into missiles. And so in my defense, I was young and impressionable and needed the money, and so that's how that happened. So these guys, they had this surge arrestor in there to try to avoid that to a certain extent, and then they're meant to operate between 20 and 50 psi. And when where I'm running these with the standard nozzle in it, it's a 5/30 seconds, I'm pretty sure. I run them at 40 psi on my setup. I throttled it back a little bit, and they're putting out 4.4 gallons a minute across, I want to say, somewhere in the 40s of a radius, and possibly as much as 49 feet, but I feel like it's 40, which is a pretty good radius. And as always, I'll go ahead and put the performance specs on the screen for you too. And I hate to stumble through them like I just did, but for whatever reason, I don't hang on to those things the way I used to. Anyhow, as near as I can tell, these were discontinued fairly quickly. And I'm not sure why. The 150 and 155 were great impacts. They worked beautifully. And when you see these things in operation, at the right pressure, they're going to run well. And certainly for decades after these things were on the market, people were still putting relatively large can pop-up impact rotors in the ground. So it's not like, they went out of fashion because suddenly the Super 600 ate the market from Toro or something, and you're a decade before anybody's even dreaming of a PGP, except for maybe Ed Hunter as he plotted his escape from Toro. So that's pretty much what I have to say about this sprinkler. As always, if you like the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. If you hit like on the videos, that shows them to more people, so I think that's always a good thing. And the other thing I would just encourage you to do is check out my playlist that has content from a bunch of other people who are putting sprinkler videos out. Some of those guys are so much more knowledgeable than I am. They're better photographers. They have different stuff to show. And I think if you like this video, you're going to really love what those other people are putting out. So I would encourage you to subscribe to all those other channels as well. And with that, I'll get out of the way, and we can go ahead and watch both of these guys in operation. Thanks for watching.